Let's just start most simply. Your reaction to these tariffs and what could be sparking a global trade war. How is that going to impact Americans?
Well, most Americans who voted for him or putting their trust in him to do what he said he was going to do, which was going to be lowering costs for Americans. Before he did this, we saw inflation go up. We saw costs go up across the board. People were economically hurting because of the 73 days he had in office, including seeing the stock market go down so much that 401k plans were losing on average hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And so now he's added injury to injury by doing tariffs that, picking the most conservative estimates, is going to add between $3,000 and $4,000 of costs to the average American families. He is betraying people who put their trust in him. We know our history from the Smoot-Hawley Act all the way to the current time, that launching trade wars against our allies, launching trade wars globally, it's only going to escalate, and ultimately the losers are going to be Americans who are already struggling with overly high prices.
So, Senator, we're already seeing the response from overseas, despite the Treasury Secretary's words of advice to foreign countries saying, hey, just sit back, don't retaliate. That's precisely not what's going to happen. It seems like most of these governments have already said, well, we are going to hit back. How do you see this spiraling?
Well, you know, it's going to continue to spiral until we, the people in this country, say enough is enough. 73 days, and this man has done things to increase our prescription drug costs. This man has done things to make health care less accessible, not more, with his attacks on the Affordable Care Act, the portals in which people register. This person is doing mass layoffs of veterans. The president that has now the record in American history, at least modern American history, for laying off veterans, many of them in the VA, thousands and thousands of folks who were serving other veterans. What this guy is doing to Social Security and undermine the ability for people to connect with that vital agency for their checks that they rely on. What this man is doing right now with the bill that's coming towards us to gut Medicaid, something that parents rely on, that children with disabilities rely on, with birthing mothers relying on, and also our seniors. In every way already, he's been causing chaos to our economy, hurting people. But now this is something like we've never before seen in my lifetime. A president launching a trade war that's going to spiral in ways that every day are going to add costs to Americans. Prices are going to go up. The hardship is going to go up. And maybe he won't feel it, or people like Elon Musk won't feel it, or his cabinet, which is dollar for dollar the wealthiest cabinet we've ever had. They may not feel it. But the families in New Jersey are going to really hurt. The people that have been struggling in this country to make ends meet are going to really hurt. The people that are doubling and tripling up in their housing, moving in with people because their rent is about 50% of their income, they're going to really feel it. This is not right. It is wrong. And more people need to start speaking out.
So, Senator, there have been times where Democrats have been supportive of tariffs. We had DNC Chair Martin on earlier talking about the steel industry in northern Minnesota, his home state, saying that was a useful moment. We should note, in the Rose Garden yesterday, members of the UAW, the Autos Worker Union, they were there. That's a constituency the Democrats have largely counted on. So talk to us about how your party should have the conversation about these tariffs and thread that needle.
Well, look, you know, we are a nation that has been very strategic. Presidents before this one were very thoughtful, very strategic about using this like a laser, being very precise in the application of tariffs as it affects us. This president's not doing that. He's coming in with a sledgehammer and really taking a smashing to our overall economy. Our economy's in a very difficult place right now. There are a lot of people hurting, and you have to think that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And so, yes, there is a place for tariffs. We've seen that throughout the presidents of recent, Republicans and Democrats, who've often done these things in a thoughtful, bipartisan manner. But that's not the way this president operates. He doesn't come to Congress. He doesn't work with a deep analysis of how his actions are going to impact people, everyday people. His callousness, his lack of empathy, the hurt he's about to put on with families that he's offering no reprieve to. He's offering no, hey, this is how we're going to help you through it. He's just simply stepping back and wielding his sledgehammer, and really it's going to shatter the economic lives of millions of Americans by adding thousands of dollars of cost to their already overstrained budgets.
Senator, we have a lot we still want to talk to you about, but we want to stay on this topic and just bring in the co-anchor of CNBC's Squawk Box, New York Times columnist, Andrew Ross Sorkin. Andrew, we've been talking a lot about the fallout that appears to be happening in real time. I want to take an attempt at the president's position here. Is there a long-term gain to be had to these tariffs?
I think there's a very questionable long-term gain because the short-term pain might ultimately spiral in a way that I think is very complicated for not just the United States, but for the rest of the world, our relationship with the rest of the world. You know, when I spoke to a whole bunch of business leaders last evening after this announcement that do business in all of these countries, do they worry about what the tariffs are going to mean for imports into the United States? Yes. And those costs? Absolutely. But one of the things that people don't think about, they said, you know, people in those countries are not going to buy our products, almost in a retaliatory way. People are not going to buy services. So, you know, financial services, banks, all of the things that we have exported. The American dream has helped, you know, companies like McDonald's and Nike sell shoes into India and China and all sorts of places. It is not clear, irrespective of whatever you think the tariff number is, that those businesses are going to have the same type of success, that they're going to be able to hire people. People used to love to work at these kinds of companies in international markets because it had the seal of approval of being a U.S. multinational company. That is not the case today. And that is a very big, very, very big deal.
I want to get back to Senator Booker, but before you go, real quick, Andrew, just that the president did post that the patient is recovering or something like that.
The patient lived and is healing.
Is healing. How are the markets reacting?
Well, the markets are not healing. No, we are down. We're down 3% on the Dow, if not more. And the big question, we've talked about this before, is, you know, to bring back manufacturing to the U.S., for companies to actually have to make real decisions now about what to do. Some of them are going to bring back manufacturing to the U.S., and they may do it quickly. But there's going to be a lot more who are going to try to play politics and play chicken and say, you know what, I don't know whether in 3 or 4 years from now these tariffs will still be the same. And if they're not, it's going to take me 3 or 4 years for my factory that I'm going to build to be online anyway. So you know what? I'm going to take the chance that things are going to not go so well, and therefore these will get changed or eliminated or shifted, or the politics in the United States will otherwise adjust. And if that's the case, the next couple of years are going to be very complicated because it means that nobody's going to make any investment. It's going to freeze that investment.
All right, CNBC's Andrew Ross Sorkin, thank you very much. Now back to Senator Cory Booker. Sir, you made history on the Senate floor this week, standing for more than 25 hours, delivering a speech protesting the Trump administration's policies. Let's take a look at just some of what you said.
Tonight, I rise with the intention of getting in some good trouble. I rise with the intention of disrupting the normal business of the United States Senate for as long as I am physically able. I rise tonight because I believe sincerely that our country is in crisis. Republicans as well as Democrats are talking to me about what they feel is a sense of dread about a growing crisis, or what they point to about what is going wrong, that bedrock commitments in our country that both sides rely on, that people from all backgrounds rely on, those bedrock commitments are being broken. These are not normal times in America. And they should not be treated as such. Generations from now will look back at this moment and have a single question. Where were you? Where were you when our country was in crisis and when American people were asking for help? Help me. Help me. Did we speak up? This is a moral moment. It's not left or right, it's right or wrong. Let's get in good trouble. My friend, Madam President, I yield the floor.
All right, Senator Booker, you're getting a lot of coverage and support for what you did. Tell us why you did it, and will we see this again?
Well, you've been talking about it this morning. Why? I mean, when you have business leaders from across the political spectrum talking about the consequences of what this president is going to do, when he's brought so much chaos and uncertainty, as Andrew was saying, businesses need certainty. This is not going to result in what he's saying. This is going to result in more hurt and more pain. He's attacking our health care. He's attacking our retirement security. He's attacking education. He's attacking our very values by trampling on our Constitution. And then when judges, Republican-appointed judges, are threatened by him for impeachment, or even the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court has to call him out, are we just sitting by and being witnesses to these kind of insults, outrages, and this kind of peril? It's a time that all of us do things that are different. And I have to be honest with you, the Democratic Party, we have to do more. And so I think we decided this strategy, my team and I have to give a lot of credit to my staff. We just said, let's start trying to find better tactics, because our constituents are writing us painful letters about their hurt and their fear and their anger, demanding that we do more. We have to answer that demand. And so, we decided to try to disrupt the Senate and bring hopefully a focal point on the voices of my constituents and around the country, people and Republicans and Democrats who are just saying enough is enough. We've got to stop this.
Senator, it's Lauren Leader. I wanted to ask you actually about the Senate. My understanding is yesterday, Senator Paul and Kaine united to try to pass a resolution or some sort of stopgap to prevent some of the worst of the tariffs, specifically on Canada. What do you see as the opportunities ahead for the Senate to potentially blunt some of the worst of the potential impact of the tariffs? What power does the Senate have now, you believe, to block what could be a terrible impact on America?
Yeah, it was a marvelous sort of glimmer of hope. Yeah. It really was. It was a crack. The first real crack we're seeing, and God bless Tim Kaine, and frankly, thank you, Rand Paul, for testing it and getting 4 Republicans to join with Democrats and say, Canada has stood with us in every war since the War of 1812. They bled by us. They are one of our top trading partners. Our economies are intricately interwoven. Many products Americans have crossed that border multiple times to help us to both have a stronger economy. So those two joined together. This is the numbers. We did it with John McCain and Murkowski and Collins in the first Trump administration to push back on their attempt to tear down the ACA from 20 million people. We showed that we can appeal to the conscience of our country and to the Republicans here to say enough is enough. And the numbers here are clear. We need 3 in the House to stand against this president and his hurtful and harmful policies, or 4 in the Senate. And I believe if more Republican voices and independent voices and Democratic voices start coming off the sidelines and saying, it's time for me to stand for my country, it's time for me to stand for veterans, stand for health care, stand for expectant mothers, stand for our children, if more of us start doing that, I'm sure that what we saw with the great move by Tim Kaine and Rand Paul will become more usual, and ultimately we'll be able to score more victories in stopping this president from hurting American people.